I'm Joanne Wilson, and this is Positively Gotham Gal. Real, honest, and meaningful conversations with women entrepreneurs and their approach to life, business, and everything in between.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Well, thanks. And yourself? Happy
Good.
Friday.
Happy Friday. It's a good Friday this week.
I think so. Maybe the best Friday yet of the year.
For sure. Might be the best Friday of the last 4 years.
What is there anything in particular that makes you say that?
Well, certainly a new president has made me say that, and I don't feel the need to.
Last 4 years I didn't put two. I'm sorry. The PTSD made me just sort of.
Exactly. There was, the last. It's literally. I felt it was my. It was important that I was paying attention to everything that was happening because I wanted to make sure nothing crazy happened. Not that I could do anything about it, but I felt it was my duty to pay attention.
100%. I think that that's something that will be. There are a lot of people who you probably did before, but who previously didn't pay attention to things, who now will. I think like once you vote once, you're going to vote again, and like you never want to go through unfortunate things to get to the silver linings. But I do think that that is a real silver lining, and it's so funny. I started off the year basically. This is like way too much information.
That's okay.
Crying a lot. I think no one enjoyed the chaos of it, and now it just
100%. I mean, it is. I didn't even check like my Twitter feed the last couple of days because I don't care. Like I know that someone intelligent is managing things, that I don't need to worry that like we're going to go into something crazy from some crazy knee-jerk reaction.
I think the whole world is looking for just togetherness, like unity, and just togetherness and everything that it brings. I mean, we've been isolated in our homes, we've been isolated in everyone's view, and like, no, we're connected. It's one community, it's one economy, it's one humanity.
So where are you from originally? And how did you end up in Georgia?
I grew up in Atlanta. I'm British and I suppose Iranian from heritage and German as well. My father is Iranian, my mother is German, both also British. And then, wait, I can start this all together and make it. I grew up in Atlanta. I was born in London, grew up in Atlanta, was here till I was 13, actually, and that's when I first started walking the factory floor, which I now work at, and just in between that, sort of went about it to Europe and to New York, to other parts of the world. But it's funny, those were great experiences to have, but I think nothing beats the experience of manufacturing and running a factory, especially in a pandemic. I mean, if you want to have a formative experience, manufacturing in a pandemic is certainly formative. And
I'm sure. I mean, so just of historical interest, my grandfather had a shoe business.
Really? Oh, yes. How wonderful. Tell me.
So he had a shoe store in 2 stores in Bakersfield, California. And when he got sick and then he died. And the biggest mistake they made was it was a different time. And instead of giving the stores to my mother, who probably would have made it into a chain of 100 stores, they gave it to her brother, who was completely incompetent. And within 1 year, both stores closed.
I mean, questions of succession are so difficult, but doesn't matter what your business is doing. I think particularly shoes, so I'm biased, whoever runs it needs to put their heart and soul into it. I mean, it is not easy and takes a lot of life force. So you'll find out internally pretty soon on whether you're dedicated in terms of making it work.
Your history is is quite interesting in regards to your education and what you did prior to taking over the family business. But you do have three brothers. So was it always this sort of from your father or your interests that you were going to take over this family business?
Not necessarily to take over Okabashi as a business, but I'd always loved and still do, if anything, it's growing immensely. Factories, production, there's an element of sort of interacting with not only the manufacturing process, but with people in a different way. A manufacturing business is not a tech business. There are different dynamics. And I love it. And I love the thrill of it. And I love the team and producing something and seeing the impact. I think that perhaps I was the most naive of my siblings. So when my father said that he was looking to retire and wanted to have more ice cream in his life, then I was like, well, there's so much potential with sustainably made in USA. And I'd love to go deeper in terms of, becoming leaders in sustainability, in terms of telling our story and introducing our product to more people, and just jumped in the deep end. It definitely was more of a challenge than I had expected on the front end, but so much fun.
And are your brothers involved with the business at all?
Not directly, but
Well, it's a family business, so everyone's still involved in some respects.
Exactly.
Yes.
And they all have their own work experiences. They really are great in terms of giving me advice. They have all their fields of expertise. So I'm always going to one or the other to say, what should I do here?
That's great. And so you were a consultant for, a variety of Fortune 500 companies. So, all of that, as you were working in them, did you, take that knowledge and start thinking about how you could apply that to your family business?
Yeah, it was definitely inspirational to see inside these other businesses, what does innovation at leading companies look like? I think when you start to work with a small business and in manufacturing, I have found that the lessons I've most leaned on, I mean, don't get me wrong, understanding finance, understanding process has been so important, but the lessons that I most lean on are those from the University of Life. It's about interacting with people. It's about understanding what people want, how to communicate. And the nice thing within our team is that everyone is aligned and, trying to champion sustainably made in USA. So it's about bringing together all of the people and a lot of organization.
Yeah.
A lot less. The innovation, I think, can look a lot less shiny in reality than one sees from the outside. It's about getting it done.
No, that makes sense. My first job out of college, I went to work at Macy's and I ran the cosmetic department. I was extremely young. I was 21 years old and I had 100 women reporting to me. It was the number one cosmetic department outside of Herald Square. And, here I was, essentially a young female CEO of my department. And, the biggest challenges I had, and I want to hear about what your challenges have been, is that everyone was older than me. And seeing many people come through that job. And so how did I build a relationship with them that could make them look better than they ever did? And in turn, that made me look better than I ever did.
And I think that's exactly it. If you realize that the more that every part of the team succeeds, the more the whole succeeds.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that in terms of sort of coming into a business where others have more experience than you, I'm the first one to say, I feel like I start nearly every meeting saying, I'm the least technical, or I know the least about this. It's people can tell if you're dedicated. And I think that also work ethic is so important, as well as results. But if you aren't going to work hard and listen and try and learn from others in the team who do have more experience, it's a non-starter. You're never going to get to where you want to go.
Completely. So you also launched this Comfort for Frontline Heroes campaign, where you donated 10,000 pair of shoes to frontline healthcare workers because, not only is that a good thing, but your shoes do have this ergonomic footwear so that, you're not standing for thousands of hours and in utter pain. And talk about that program and how that felt for the company and what made you come up with that concept.
When the pandemic hit, March and April is sort of scarred in my brain. I think probably when I don't know if I ever reach 120, but I'll still very much remember that time in my life. You know, the first element of concern was the safety of the team. What is this virus? How is it spread? Do we need to shut down completely? Oh, what's a face mask? Oh, these are great. Immediately, let's have everyone wear a face mask. Then we need to get the supplies. So there are so many. We always have known our values, but how does that translate into specific actions during a pandemic? And I think we also looked at our manufacturing capability to say, is there anything that we can manufacture that would support our community in whatever way? So deep diving into all different, everything from, ventilator product, like, is there a specific part that there isn't other production in the US that we can help to support to make? And in the end, we came up with donating our shoes because that is really what our expertise is. And we were hearing that, when you walk from one environment to the other, you could carry germs on your shoes. And, you need to have, especially frontline heroes, need to be able to have a change of shoes.
Ah, okay.
Not only for comfort,
Makes
but
sense.
also for sanitizing.
Yes.
And shoes are machine washable. So you can just either if you want to do a disinfectant wipe on them, or if you just want to throw them in the washing machine.
Right.
And so we felt lucky that there was an aspect of our shoes that could meaningfully help. Just flip-flops bring joy. Like when you put on a nice pair of flip-flops, you're going to be happy. And I think for people facing so many challenges and so much sadness, it's nice to receive something that also just brings joy.
Totally. So what's really interesting about your company more than anything else, one being that you're, a family business, that you've taken it over and you're a young female, is that less than 2% of the entire footwear market is made in the United States anymore. And which is in one way is not shocking, but on the other hand, if you look back at one point, there was tons of shoes made here. How many people do you employ? And do you think that that can change for more footwear to be produced here as we move forward?
We have over 150 people in our team. And, when we started out, to your point, 60% of shoes were being made in the US. And now it's really such a small amount. And it is heartbreaking, when you think about all of those jobs that needed to be lost and also all of the manufacturing know-how. Shoes are complicated things and manufacturing is complicated. So if you have a gap in that know-how, you lose it. It's not that we have an invisible bank of knowledge. It always needs to be a continuum. I do think that manufacturing in the US will grow, and also within footwear. Everyone has started, I think, for the cliche term, more now more than ever, has started to realize the power of US manufacturing. And on one element, there is the community side in creating jobs and supporting the local vendor ecosystem. On the other side, it's also on the logistics and supply chain. We work with a number of partners where we're able to produce to order, and then to be able to turn it around and send it to them, within a week, within 2 weeks, so that they then have the perfect inventory.
Right.
And on the environmental side, as you have a consumer that is becoming more and more sophisticated in their understanding of environmental impact and more motivated to improve their own footprint, not shipping shoes halfway around the world is definitely better for the planet, even independent of the materials, which we've continued to innovate. Our shoes are 45% soy. they're recyclable. Because we're domestic, we're able to sort of have circular programs. So for all of these reasons, I think that US manufacturing will get back to where it once was and more.
Well, shoes are not easy. And I know that because I've been in some shoe businesses, and not a lot has changed in shoes over the last couple hundred years. But, it has become so expensive to manufacture in the United States in regards to, healthcare and the cost of labor. But my guess is as we become a more technology, so you're using high-end technology to manufacture shoes that you can then source from local and be able to turn that around quicker, that you become a leaner machine so that you can bring these jobs and keep these jobs here and build more kind of manufacturing plants, not only shoes, but other kind of items. And I agree, shipping them across the world doesn't really make sense from a carbon perspective.
No, not at all. And there is that fine balance, how much do you want the manufacturing to increase? And then how much do you want the jobs to increase? And these two go hand in hand. I have an interesting relationship when it comes to thinking about automation. I think that it is important to an extent that it makes the manufacturing viable.
Mm-hmm.
However, one doesn't want to cut out 100% of that human element. Then you wouldn't have any jobs created from it.
For sure.
People with the know-how. So I think that there's a sort of sweet spot. I don't think that the automation systems as they are right now are at a level that it would not create jobs. But it's an interesting, almost philosophical tension.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, there is, you see so many jobs and I think to myself, wow, is that job even going to exist in, 3 or 4 years due to automation? But on the other hand, there will always be a need for people. And so what is the balance to have the right margins, the right community, the right product, and everything else?
Yeah. I think that that's the right word, is that it's not just jobs as a number, but it's people. And we are a family operated business, and we talk a lot about the Okabashi family. And I think particularly in a time like a pandemic, a team member will quickly learn whether they're seen as a person or someone filling a particular job. And I think that's something that I'm super proud about, how the company has responded and really tried to be there for all of the team Okabashi family.
And how did you respond to this pandemic in regards to, managing and an industry in manufacturing where people are coming together and no one knew what was going on early last year in March, and all of a sudden everyone has to wear masks and people are afraid that everything they touch is going to spread something and get people sick? I mean, were you able to contain the virus inside of your plants, and how did you go about that?
So, I think that there were so many of us in the world that quickly became Google scientists.
Yes.
Like Google. So I never try and do all of my reading as all of the research was developing. And as soon as we learned about sort of that masks could help, very quickly, far before any of the CDC recommendations came up, there's a certain logic of how they would work. There's an element of definitely common sense.
Oh, for sure.
We mandated that everyone wear. We, changed our operating system from break times to social distancing to sanitizing. Our front office worked from home. I made sure that I was in the office every single day so that if anyone had a question, that I would be there to be able to answer. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to answer on specifics of COVID on a molecular business level, but I was able to about the business. And, when all the economy is changing, also to be able to reassure people that, no matter what happens, we've got your back and we're in this together. And I'm really proud that our team, if anything, is larger than before, and that we've really been able to partner with our team through this on my own personal level, I think a month into it, my brothers intervened and said, if you don't start running in the mornings for stress management, I think you become
You're gonna exactly. And with someone taking over a business, have you, started to put in more of the direct to consumer that probably wasn't there 20 years ago?
Definitely. And I think that that's, again, part of what does made in USA mean was we're going back to the supply chain, the environmental, the community aspect. On the supply chain side, we're able to just produce and ship out. And so we're also able to do drop ship. And the company didn't necessarily promote everything about the story, about the values. We've just done things because that's the DNA of the company and of the team. So I think that our material was 45% soy for a long time before we even told anyone about it. We just thought that was a better way to operate. And so we have definitely put more energy in direct consumer and telling our story as well.
That's great. Are you going to start adding other shoes to your line as you move forward?
We are entering new product categories and trying to launch a few that would be good for fall as well. So stay tuned. It's exciting. We're totally vertically integrated, including our design. So, for example, our footwear, our sort of new style designer, Naomi, has been with our team for over 20 years.
Wow.
She is a classically trained sculptor. And so now there's a lot more 3D and digital tools to do it. But I remember, I've known Naomi for 20 years, mm-hmm. Family company. But so I remember back in the day also seeing her sculpt out new styles of clay. And so product development is always a fun process. It looks different today to what it used to. There is unfortunately no clay involved anymore.
Yes.
It is fun to start to think about new product categories.
And, what are the silver linings of the pandemic in your industry?
One of the silver linings is that people just appreciate community more. I've gotten to know my neighbors on my street better than I ever would have before. And I think that it's not just on the hyper local basis, but on the broader basis. And I think that there is more empathy. And I think that's something that we're going to see growing this year and beyond. And I think that translates in terms of more empathy for eco-friendly practices and also for that made in USA element, and that we are focused on our community.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, certainly the eco is very important, and it's going to be much, much more important as we move forward. And I mean, how about you yourself? I mean, what surprised you about yourself this year? I mean, having to, go through a pandemic, running a company, did you learn anything about yourself that surprised you or that you're going to bring with you moving forward?
I think it's that I'm more resilient than I would have expected, and that, this isn't a challenge that I would have anticipated or looked forward to by any means.
But I don't think anyone has.
I am so happy to know that, when push came to shove, I didn't run for the hills. I said, no, we're doing this. I'm here, and I am here for the team, and I'm here for the company. And, whatever comes, we'll get through it together. So I think I've learned a lot about resilience and how I operate under stress.
Yes.
Haven't we all? I mean, let's be honest. I mean, we've all learned about ourselves. I mean, what have you learned during this time?
That's a great question. I mean, I think that one of the things that I have learned is that my community of friends is smaller and tighter, and and much more important to me. And that it's important to slow down and sort of take a look around you. That process is important, that jumping into something, you know, in a heartbeat is not necessarily the way to go. And so, you know, when things go crazy, you're running a company, you sort of have to react immediately, but there's something about this that you're not getting out of this that gives you room to pause and really think about, okay, you know, this isn't over in 2 weeks. This could go on for a long time. What is it that I have to do that is going to make the company good and also make me happy? And so I think that life balance has become much more important for everybody, that you can work home, and obviously not factory workers, but that you can work from home and still do what you need to do. And so I think for everyone, that is going to be very game changing. I don't see people returning to the office 5 days a week. And, you know, I think it's been the greatest for women, because they can have the balance of the family and the business and getting the job done without someone looking over their shoulder when they need to get something done wherever they are. And so I think that's been the greatest gift that COVID has given us.
It is very hard to find balance in our contemporary world, and there are so many things that can drive it, and physical space and delineation, I think, can also make such an impact, whether it's a different room, whether it's an area where you sort of zoom in. Growing up, my father told me about this concept of location-based thinking. So if you're in an area where you think about work and work challenges, be fully in it. But when you leave it, you know, give yourself mental room to create that balance.
I like that.
That was good. I still haven't figured out exactly.
Well, it's hard. I mean, you know, one of my daughters, it's like whenever I ask about what she's working on, on the weekends, no discussion of work on the weekend. And I'm like, I appreciate that. You know, I don't do that, but I definitely appreciate that that is how she sets her boundaries.
And it's a continuous process.
Always, always, always. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I mean, it's very cool what you have done. I mean, taking over a family business, it's been around for a long time, and bringing it into where we're going. And that, you know, you're one of the few manufacturers of shoes in this country.
Well, thank you so much for listening and for making time. And I really love this conversation. Hopefully we can continue it another time.
Absolutely. All right. Well, take care and enjoy the weekend.